Welcome to another episode of the Voice of Influence podcast. I'm your host, Fong Chua. And on this show, our aim is to break down the barriers of public speaking, allowing you to succeed and become the voice of influence. And today we have an exciting guest. I've had the privilege of seeing her speak live on stage. And every time she speaks, she has this high energy, high engagement, and just so authentic that people just sit and listen and get so much value from her. So I'm very excited to have her here. She is a leadership, visibility, and personal branding expert, a podcast host where she shows leaders how to harness uncertainty and create more high value opportunities by unlocking their greatest assets, which is themselves. So please welcome business and leadership coach, founder of Artemis Futures International, and also founder of Building Brand New, Ms. Kym Hamer.
Thank you very much, Fong.
Hey.
I don't know what else to say now.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. It's always a joy having you on our shows and also speaking with you. And yeah, we'll just jump right into it. So our
Absolutely.
podcast now is talking about speaking, people's journey about speaking, and also the tips and tricks and stuff that they've overcome. What got you into speaking to begin with? I know you're a branding expert. I know you're a leadership expert. How did that translate into becoming a speaker for you?
Okay. So I've always not been drawn to speaking, but always been someone who has been asked to speak. And I don't know whether that came from being really young. And I would go to school for show and tells. And when my mum was pregnant with my younger sister, who is 4 years younger than me, I kept asking mum the details, shall we say, of how pregnancy occurs and things like that. And mum finally told me, you know, the details. And I promptly went to school the next day and told all of the kids about how sex works and all of that sort of thing. So, precocious kind of 4-year-old. So I don't know whether it started from there, but in my in my business, one of the things is I like to speak. I enjoy it. I'm good at it, but it's not the core of my business. And I use it more as a vehicle for certain things. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So the first reason is that when I started the business in 2019, I wanted the business to be non-location specific. So if I wanted to, I could be anywhere in the world. Now, my family lives in Australia, I'm in London. So I wanted at any point to be able to pick up my stuff and go and spend 2 months working in their back room in Australia. So that's a real driver for my business. The second part of that is that from a temperament point of view, I like conversations better than speaking. I like the intimacy of, whether we're having a conversation like this, Fong, or it's a small group. And I would much rather do that than sort of chase the sort of the big speaking gigs. So bit of temperament, bit of driver for the business. And while I find it's exciting to be on stage and speak to, hundreds, thousands of people, there's always a moment before I go on. It never gets away. I'm always nervous and I just have to stand and breathe and almost shut everything out. Once I'm on stage, I'm fine. And then when I get off, it's great, but I'm glad it's done. I don't seem to have this need to do it like other people do. So it's kind of three reasons, I guess.
That's
That's where
awesome.
it started.
What was the biggest change that you've noticed since being a speaker? Like
Yeah.
going up on stages and speaking or going on different conferences or breakout rooms and all that kind of stuff. What
Mm.
have you noticed as the biggest change where you didn't have before, where now you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that it's actually something you referred to when you introduced me, the authenticity. And when I say a comfort with being myself and trusting myself as the expert in what I'm talking about. Uh, I think in corporate life, I was very polished and very good, but I was quite wired as a speaker, if you like. Whereas now, while I get nervous, there's a sense of, I speak about my expert area. And, I do a lot of podcast interviews, which I think actually really helps you crystallize your message. I did that a lot when I started my business. I have a podcast, helps you be really crisp and clear about what you're doing. And because all of that practice has kind of built this muscle, it's almost that I don't have to think about it anymore. And I just trust that I will show up as me, and what happens is what will happen. So I think that's been a really big shift. A lot of that is preparation. Don't kind of just leap out on stage with no preparation at all. But, I think that's the underlying piece that feels like the change.
What I like most about what you just said there is that you still mentioned that you're nervous at times.
Yeah.
No matter
Yeah.
how big, how small, whatever it is, there's still that little bit of nerves before you start speaking. And I
Yeah.
think the key for a lot of speakers is reducing the amount of time it takes you to overcome those nerves. You just mentioned that you breathe. Well, how long are you breathing there? Is there this awkward silence where we're just waiting for you to speak as you're breathing? Like what's going through your mind? What are you
Yeah.
thinking about? What are you talking to yourself about to
Yep.
get through that hump to reduce that time?
Excellent questions. So firstly, the breathing happens before I even get on the stage. So when I'm waiting in the wings backstage to come on, whether it's in another room and it's a small group, or whether it's on a big stage like we've been in Los Angeles and other places. So when I'm standing waiting to go on, I ground myself. So I stand with my feet flat on the ground. I look straight ahead and I just breathe, and I just focus on the breath until they call me on. So I don't want to talk to anybody. I used to do exams like this as well. I didn't like to talk to anybody. I used to go away and kind of anchor myself a bit and breathe. And then the second thing is that it's about owning the space. So, I might walk on stage. It might be just me. I might be meeting someone on stage and then taking my place. I don't start speaking until I've stood where I'm going to start and I've just taken a couple of breaths. It might seem like minutes, but actually what I'm doing is kind of gathering my energy and really getting present to the audience and what I'm here to do. So there's a real sense of almost like everything disappears around me because I just get really present. The key to that is don't talk before you're anchored, or before I'm anchored. So that's where it starts for me. And I think the third thing someone told me many, many years ago is that, the power of pause. We're very conscious of silence. And actually what might seem like, minutes of silence for us is firstly not that for anybody else. And it also serves to amplify what you say next and to allow things to land. So that kind of breathing, standing and anchoring, and then just breathing. Yeah.
What would be your advice for people to practice the pause and be comfortable with silence? Because what you just mentioned there, in my mind, means, okay, you're on stage, and yes, it might be seconds, but for some people, those seconds are grueling because there's silence. Everybody's staring at you. Everybody's waiting for you to utter your first words. How do you become comfortable with silence?
I don't think you ever really do. It's a muscle. Yeah, I know. So it's like, I think it's like you and Stacy in the Voice of Influence program. You talk about building muscles. What you're doing is helping people to build new habits, new muscles, so that they can go away and practice them like you do at the gym, like you do when you're learning a musical instrument. You don't start off playing Mozart. You start off with scales and exercises, and they're boring, but that's the work that needs to be done before you actually, before it looks easy to others. Right. And once you create those habits, it's like everything. Once you create the habit, it drops into that sort of unconscious. And then what you're focused on is the thing that's left to focus on, whatever that is. I think that the silence thing is really powerful, and you can actually practice that in your everyday life, because I think as a society, particularly in Western society, this may be a generalization, we're not comfortable with silence in conversation. We're not comfortable with silence in rooms. And actually, there's nothing wrong with silence. We're so quick to fill the silence. So you can start to practice that even before you get up on your stage or in front of your group. Practice it in your everyday life. Don't be so, watch. It might be that you count to 3 before you answer a question or contribute to a group. So, there's things we can do just to build that muscle, and it's building that muscle. And then when you get on stage, you've already built the muscle to a degree. So then standing on stage, while it might be uncomfortable, you go, okay, this silence thing I've done before.
Right.
I know this. Yeah.
I like to share, well, piggybacking on what you just said there. I know a lot of people out there who are left brain, they go 3 seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and then you ask the question. And I would have to say that there's going to be a period of time where it is going to feel very awkward for people.
Mm.
And my tip is to, okay, practice those types of strategies with either one-on-one groups or smaller 5 groups or something like that until you get to the bigger groups. So then you're not actually in your mind 1, 2, high. It's fun.
But it's that noticing. The other thing too is often noticing like what's going off in our head when we rush to jump in. Because, I mean, if we talk about, different styles of thinking, some people are very, if you like, off the cuff, they get in, they respond immediately. Others are more reflective and thoughtful.
Right.
And it might not just be about us. It might be about giving space for other people to hear us and then to digest what we've said. So one of the things when I practice my talks is that I like to, so I write it on Post-it notes, and the Post-it notes get briefer and briefer the more I practice. So I only have a keyword on it at the end so I can remember. In between each Post-it note, each story or pillar, there's a pause. So it's not about, racing ahead. It's going, this is the point. Then this is the point. Then this is the point. And we can use those faster or slower. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, I want to take you back to your very first speaking engagement, whether it's with a group of 5, 10 people or your first 100 people, whatever it is that you would like to share.
Yeah.
You believe was like, this is the moment I need to face so I can grow.
Yeah.
How was that first engagement for you? How did you feel? And thinking back, was it as good as you thought it was or as bad as you thought it was?
Better both, I think. So I was probably in my mid-20s. I'd been working for this dairy products company in Australia, and it had gone through a couple of iterations of, buying new businesses, and I was working in one of the new businesses, and we were hosting the national conference. So we kind of ran the agenda, and at the time I was looking after all of the, if you like, non-milk, liquid milk products. So I had yogurt and custards and cream and juice and all sorts of things. And I was given a slot to speak at the conference, and there were maybe 120, 130 people from all over Australia. It was, the people I knew that I worked with in the team. And I really I wanted to do a good job. I felt like I'd done some good speaking stuff before, but this was my first, if you like, professional my career speaking gig, and I was really nervous. I remember thinking, oh, I hope I don't muck it up. All of these amazing people from head office, and I want to impress them. 'Cause I was ambitious. I wanted to get ahead. I wanted to be impressive and not fall apart. So I I'd practiced and practiced and practiced. And then, I was on the second day. So I just sit through the first day and listen to everybody else. And then on the second day, I was sort of standing off stage, and the CEO of our division, announced, invited me to the stage and said, Kym will be speaking. And every single person that worked with me in the Victorian teams, that was about half of the conference, went nuts. They cheered, they clapped, they, woo, and there was I felt like they had my back. I kind of went, it was really moving, actually. I was still nervous as anything, but to be part of that, feel part of that as a family or a team, it was just a brilliant feeling to represent my team in my area like that. So it was a fantastic experience. I loved it. And I didn't necessarily seek lots of things out, but I got opportunities from that. So I got to practice more, and I got more profile in the business and all of that sort of thing. So that was my first professional gig. Yeah.
That is awesome. Now, I know a person could practice and rehearse and go over their speeches over and over again, but nothing ever comes out perfect. You
No.
don't know what's going to happen with the audience. You don't know if somebody's going to say something. You don't know if something's going to fly by and make you forget something. Do you have a go-to thing that you do where if things don't go according to plan, you go to this like ironclad strategy to get you back on track? What is it that you do? Is there a story that you go and, okay, I'm going to jump into the story, or I'm going to jump into these questions or jump into these exercises to get you back on track? What do you do?
So a couple of things, actually. So most talks I do have a title or a statement that I repeat. So you've seen my Every Contact Leaves a Trace talk, and there are points in that I keep coming back to. Every contact leaves a trace, and most of my talks have some anchor like that. So it's really helpful. You've got something that you can repeat, pause and repeat. The second thing is that I have a couple of stories that I tell all the time. They're personal stories. So one is about how I built the Kym shaped box, how I left corporate life, and that's like, I tell it all the time. Sometimes I tell it in the place I don't intend to, because that's exactly what happens. I've forgotten, or I've lost my thread, or someone's asked me a question and I've completely gone off track. So I've got a couple of stories like that, and they're just little micro stories.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is you can just admit it to the audience. If you've ever seen the Scottish comedian Billy Connolly on stage, he goes off on a tangent all of the time. And then he just stops and goes, I've completely lost my train of thought. Where was I? And he'll ask someone in the audience, and they'll say, you were talking about that. And he goes, oh, right. Now, I've never had to use that one, but I always think, he gets away with it. I reckon I could too. Probably not with 1,000 people in the room, but, yeah.
That is great. When you're working with other people who are thinking about speaking or have challenges speaking in front of large audiences, you mentioned before that podcasting is a great way of working with that muscle, asking questions, having conversations on a consistent basis, whether it's weekly, daily, bi-weekly, whatever it is.
Yep.
There's a lot of people out there who goes like, well, I'm not ready to do a podcast. I'm not ready to start one. I don't have enough people to interview and all that kind of stuff. What would you recommend them do to massage that muscle of speaking and being comfortable with?
Go and be on other people's podcasts. I mean, seriously, that's how I started. I had probably 18 months of appearing on all sorts of podcasts, just being interviewed on and getting used to, having that conversation with somebody in a more public forum, the first thing it does is it starts to prepare you. People tend to ask you the same questions if you've got a particular topic. You can always ask them, to give you questions. I don't, because I like the conversation and I'm happy to go where it leads and say, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So I think that's it can be really, just really helpful. And people, I don't know about you, Fong. I don't have guests on every one of my shows, but there are people, you're always looking for great guests, and there are groups on Facebook communities and things like that where you can just put your name down and say happy to be a guest, or you can have a look. People are always looking for guests, and it's a really great way to just practice speaking, to just practice speaking that's not in the mirror. The other thing I would also say is, if you're going to speak on podcasts, be a good guest. Go and listen to a few of the episodes before you come on board, before you turn up. Turn up ready. Make sure that you're ready, that your audio's in place, that if it's a video, that's in place. So, get ready a few minutes before. You might have some notes with you about some of the key points you want to make. That's completely fine. But the more you do that, so because I did so many, by the time I started my podcast, I wasn't even sure I was going to continue it. I did the first season and kind of went, I don't know that I've got enough to say, or I don't want to chase lots of guests. But I tested it, and then I worked out, well, I did have enough for season 2. And I came up with a framework that worked for me. And also my podcast where I speak are 15 minutes or less. So it's one idea. So that's both sides of the coin. But if you are, I would not rush in to doing a podcast before you're ready. You can take your time and use other people's podcasts, being a guest on other people's podcasts, to start to develop your style, your voice, see how you get used to that. And that actually helps you find the thread of what might be interesting for me to talk about if I were to do a podcast. So I think, there are so many. There are so many. Yeah, but just be a good podcast guest, okay?
No, that would be great for people who are looking to make an impact out there. Speaking, building relationships, and all that kind of stuff. How about for the people who are just looking to build up the confidence to speak up in team meetings, business meetings, or whatever it is, but they're usually just shy, they sit there and just listen. How do they build up their so-called speaking confidence on a daily basis?
Yeah, again,
they're not gonna jump onto a podcast.
No, they're not. They're not. And we're all at different stages, right? So I work with a lot of people who are in exactly that place. Particularly, they're at a certain point in their career and they're about to sort of really move into more senior leadership. So they're working with boards, they're working with senior level teams, all of that sort of thing. And sometimes their self-talk just gets in the way of them actually saying anything. So a lot of what I talk about is, when you go into your next team meeting or group meeting or whatever it is, and you're feeling shy, I'm not going to say just leap out and say something. First thing you need to notice is what you're telling yourself in your head, because you will be telling yourself something. There'll be some voice in there that's going, don't speak, you'll look stupid, they'll think I don't know what I'm talking. Like, there'll be something. There's something for all of us. So my thing for the last couple of years that I've been working on is, that's a bit much, Kym. I'm quite enthusiastic. I'm quite direct. And the little voice goes, oh, no, that's a bit much, Kym. It's a bit much. Notice, just sit and notice what that thing is. And it might be that, you might say, well, I have imposter syndrome. Well, you don't have imposter syndrome because it's not a pathology, it's not a disease. You have some self-talk that is undermining you, and we're just finding out what that is. So the first thing is to notice. The second thing might be to get an ally in the meeting. If there's someone you work with that can help you, and kind of you can say to them, I'm looking to speak up more. Sometimes I find it hard. Sometimes it's hard to find space in a meeting when people are not used to hearing from you.
Yeah.
So be prepared for a bit of surprise, and, don't let the fact that other people talk a lot, if it means saying, at the end of the meeting, I have something to say, or this is what I think. Remember that some of us are more reflective and thoughtful, and others jump in. So, working with people in the meeting, and particularly finding an ally that can maybe say, oh, I'd really like to hear from Fong. Fong, what do you think? That can help invite you into the conversation as well. So finding an ally, notice the story, and then find an ally who can help invite you in.
That is awesome. I tend to think about the ally thing for bigger speaking engagements where you plant people down there and go have them cheer and say woohoo and all that kind of stuff, making you more comfortable when you're up there. But having that ally in a smaller group setting would actually be very helpful too, because they break the ice for you.
Yes.
Exactly what you just did right there. Hey, do you have any comments, or what do you think? And then it kind of puts you on the spot to actually speak up, which is sometimes very difficult when it's completely silent and have that person jump out there. So great tip there.
Yeah.
When it comes to speaking as a whole, what would you say that is the most beneficial for people who's not in businesses, in entrepreneurship, for them to develop that ability to connect?
So I think we're kind of in the speaking business every day. That's how we connect with people, whether we're on this enormous stage, whether we're on a podcast, whether we're buying our coffee in the morning, it's all speaking. And it's not just, sometimes it's not about thinking of speaking as a one-way thing, even though when we're on stage or those kind of situations, it might come across like that. Speaking is about having a conversation, about being curious about people. It might be about asking questions, and thinking about all of those little exchanges that you have. Thank you in the morning with the coffee, and then a few days later you might sort of say, oh, I'm busy today. So you just practice that small next step. That small next step. If you're someone who doesn't step forward, maybe it's just about you. I don't know. Sounds really weird, but most people I see in London don't say thank you when they get off the bus. And the bus driver is down the front and you're at the middle. I always say thank you when I get on. And I notice that some people will call out thank you to the driver as they get off, and others won't. And it might be something really small like that. Who are you thanking? Are you saying good morning? How's your day? Because the more you can engage other people in the conversation, the less pressure is on you to hold the space on your own. So just be curious and have conversations. It's all speaking, but it's a conversation, really.
I love that because what you basically said is it's not as complicated as people think. Lots of people overcomplicate it to a point where they think they have to follow a certain strategy or certain steps, but it's really, hey, engage, ask questions, be folksy, say thank you, matters, and then it just stems from there. So I love how simplified you're able to make that.
And stop trying to get it right. You are who you are. And I mean, I say that, confidently and all that sort of thing. But, in those, when I go to a networking event, like I've just been at a big event today, and there's always a moment as I'm walking to the event or I'm about to walk in and think, okay, I'm going to connect with people, and there's going to be loads of people, where I go, I don't want to go in. There's a real deep introvert in there that kind of goes, I'm not shy, I am confident, but I am very introverted. So I have to kind of go, okay, we're just going in to have some conversations
Mhm.
today. That's all we're doing. And don't be afraid to just be you and say, I'm not very good at this small talk thing. I hate all this stuff. How about you? And sometimes you have the most brilliant conversations just by sharing that little moment of yourself.
Mhm. Awesome. I like that. I have that feeling all the time. Two
Yeah.
steps in, and I might be able to connect with 50, 60 people. Two steps out, I get to cuddle in my couch and watch a movie or something like that. So,
Yes, binge on Netflix.
movie, talking to you, movie, talking. Oh, wait, a movie also comes with ice cream. So
Yes.
then you just have to suck it up and go, okay, wait, I could do this later. Do this
Yeah,
first, and then
yeah,
get the ice cream
yeah.
later.
And
Awesome.
it's thinking about going to those things is like going to the gym.
Mhm.
The more you do it, the better practice you get at it. It might not be that the fear ever goes away, but you become attuned to it and it starts to become a more natural way of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except ice
Yeah.
cream kind of defeats the whole working out part. So
Well, you just have to work out more from it.
got it. Thank you very much for your time and your tips and your stories. Got five quick things for you. Give me the first thing
Okay.
in mind. Uh,
Yes.
if you had the opportunity to be on stage with somebody else to speak, fictional or real, what character or who would that be for you to speak with?
Oh, wow. Um, I think it would be Christiana Figueres, who was part of the Paris Agreement, the climate agreement. And she was instrumental in putting that together. And I just think she is unbelievably awesome and real and authentic and passionate. I'd love to share a stage with her.
Awesome. Well, because you answered that question with a real person, then my next question is, who would you like to sit down and interview for your podcast who is not a real person, a cartoon character, or
Oh, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman. Absolutely.
aside from speaking, is there a
Mm.
hidden talent that you're willing to share?
Um, I'm a I'm a connector. There's nothing more exciting for me. So I love to read. That is my first love. My second love is connecting people. So it's not even about the meeting people. It's about going, yes, I met someone the other day who does what you do. Let me introduce you. Yeah. I'm known for that too.
Awesome. You're being introduced on stage. What is your intro music? What song do you like having playing behind you?
Sia's Unstoppable.
Nice choice. And lastly, give me a number from 1 to 5.
One.
One. So tell me something about turtlenecks. It could be anything you want. It could be real, it could be fake, it could be a story, whatever it is. What is it about?
Okay. Well, what comes to mind is I was in Tobago about 16 years ago, and I saw the leatherback turtles coming out onto the beach to lay the eggs. And it comes out of the water and it's just this shadow and it's like this prehistoric creature. And then as it gets closer, you see that kind of turtleneck that all we women go, oh, we want to cover that kind of thing up when we get a bit older. So that's where I went. I went to Tobago and the leatherback turtle.
Nicely done. Thank you very much for that. It was lots of fun, and it's always a joy having you. Any final words that you would like to share?
Just have a go. It's building a muscle. It doesn't have to be grand. Just start small. Don't try and get it right, and just try and have some fun with it. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much. For everybody, make sure you connect with Kym. Lots of great content on her social media and her platform. Her podcast is amazing. She's an amazing speaker, as you can tell, and just an amazing person to connect with. So thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
also for everybody else, remember that when you speak with confidence, you have the voice of influence. We'll see you later.